Hello, good morning. My name is Tiffany Putusonia Martasia. You can call me Sonia. I'm from semester 6 in class A2, Morning Denpasar, major in English Language Education Department. This video is about my final assessment of language assessments, and in this video, I'm gonna talk about developing rubric in speaking and also writing. So before we start talk about the rubric, one of essential part before we're gonna talk about it is about language assessment. Language assessment here is the process of evaluating learners' ability to the use of language in one or more than four main skills like listening, speaking, reading, and also writing. And this language assessment is an essential part of language teaching and also language learning because it provides information about learner progress, strength, weakness, and also proficiency. So in language assessment, there are also four types of this assessment. The first one we have assessment of learning. So assessment of learning is summative assessment, and it used to judge students' performance after their learnings, and it's also important to determine what a student has learned at the end of the learning process at the end of the class. So assessment of learning also contribute to the final grades. For example, assessment of learning like final exams, TOEIC tests, and also TOEFL tests. And the second one, we have assessment for learning. So assessment for learning is also formative assessments because it used to support and also enhance learning during the learning process, and it's also important to identify students' strength and also in which area their students need to improve. So, for example, here is assessment for learning. We can say that like giving a feedback to our student performance, or as a teacher we also can make our student as a peer and they can give a feedback to each other group. And the last one, we have assessment as learning. So assessment as learning focus on the learner's role in assessing themselves, and assessment as learning also we can call it like self-assessment. So it can encourage students to reflect on their learning and can take responsibility for their improvement. And after talk about language assessment, now we continue about the rubric. So rubric is an essential part, and we can also call it essential tool in language assessment because they bring structure, clarity, and also fairness to the evaluation process of our students. And rubric here used sometimes for especially for complex skills like speaking and also writing, which are more subjective and performance based than like tests like multiple choice of a grammar test. And why rubric are important? Because it consists of several reasons. For the first one, we have clarity, consistency, feedback, self-assessments, and efficiency. So clarity here means how can rubric give a clarity to our students, and feedback here, how we provide a feedback for our learners to have improvements, and self-assessment also important. And the last one, we have efficiency. So rubric here can help teachers, and also it can help a teacher for grading, and it can use for manageable for the teachers. And for each type of language assessment also has a type of rubrics. For the example is rubric in assessment of learning. So it can be summative assessments, like rubric provide standardized scoring systems, and it can help teachers evaluate learner objectively. And for example of this rubric assessment, like um, excellence, how in the finals test, a rubric can define what excellent fluency or accurate grammars look like. And the second one, we have rubric in assessment for learning. So in formative assessments, rubric are used as a feedback tool, like I explained before. So for example, if students understand where they are and what to improve. For example, like improving coherence in their writing paper, or work in expanding vocabulary. And the last one, we have a rubric in assessment as learning. So in self assessments, students use rubric to assess their own work or their peers' work. For example, after presenting a speech, after presenting material, students can compare their performance to a rubric and identify their own strengths and also their own weakness. And the last point we have to talk here is about general information about speaking and also writing rubrics. The first one, in speaking rubrics, there are several criteria. For example, like fluency, pronunciations, and grammar, coherence, and also in speaking we also need interactive communications. And for writing rubrics, we also have several criteria. For example, like the content and the ideas, the organizations, the grammar and the language use, vocabulary, and the last one is mechanic, like the spelling, the punctuations, like that. And talk about developing rubric in speaking and also writing. There are several tips and steps in developing it. The first one, we have start with our learning objective. So the first one we're gonna do is think about what we as a teacher want students to learn from their tasks. So our rubric should match the skill or goals of our teaching process. For example, if you are teaching persuasive writing, your rubric should include organizations, arguments, strength, and also the language used. And the second one, we have choose what to evaluate, or the criteria. We can call it the criteria. So the first, we have to decide which part of the tasks are more important to assess. And for writings, this could be like the content, the organizations, the grammar, vocabulary, and also the mechanics. And maybe for speakings, it might include like the fluency, pronunciations, grammar, vocabulary, and also interactions. And the next point is decides the scoring level. So scoring level is like the scale. If you have seen a rubric in the last column, there also a scale. For example, like 1 until 4, 1 until 5, or it can also 10 until 100. So each number represents a different level of the performance. Like number 1 represents for poor, and number 4 or number 100 represents for excellence. So we also need to keep it simple and also consistent. So the next point is also write clear descriptions for each level. After we create a level, like level 1, level 2 until level 4 or level 5, we also need to have a clear descriptions for each level. For example, good, bad, instead of just saying good, bad, need improvement, of like that, we say things like use a variety of vocabulary correctly, and many others. And the next point is use a consistent format. So keep our format is consistent. For example, start each level with the same type of sentence. For example, use this, demonstrate this, like that. And the last one, we have a review and also improvement. So after all of the objective match, the skills already made, like use a proper grammar, use have a good pronunciations like that. The last one we have is review and improve. Review and improve. So after using the rubric, for a few times, as our teacher, as our students, reflections, for example, is it too hard or is it too easy, like that? Does it really measures what I want, like that? So we need our students review also to have an improvement of our rubric. For example, if the rubric is hard to understand, it also will impact our students' work. So that's all my explanations about developing rubric for speaking and also writing. Thank you.